VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on VCY America. Jim Schneider with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that there are in excess of 50 million abortions which have been committed since Roe v. Wade? According to the U.S. Census Bureau's estimated population for 2011, the number of children aborted exceeds the current populations of Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oregon, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming combined. This Sunday marks the 39th anniversary of that infamous decision, Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision which gave sanction to abortion during all stages of development. Joining us today is Troy Newman. Troy Newman is the president of Operation Rescue. He's been involved in pro-life activism since 1991. It was in 1998 he became the leader of Operation Rescue, which he rebuilt into a nationally active organization. In 2002, he moved his ministry offices to Wichita, Kansas, where he worked to expose abortion abuses at George Tiller's Women's Healthcare Services. His work has aided in the closure of several abortion clinics, their own headquarters based in a former abortion clinic. Troy is president of Operation Rescue, one of the leading pro-life Christian activist organizations in the nation, and has become a strong voice for the pro-life movement here in America. Troy, nice to have you here on Crosstalk.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I wish it was a better topic, a better time. I never like to call the anniversary of Roe versus Wade just that, an anniversary. I think that's kind of something to celebrate. I like to call it a memorial. So we're memorializing the 39th year of a decision that has brought down untold judgment upon America with the shedding of innocent blood to the tune of 50 million innocent children.
Troy, I saw today abortion is the number one cause of death in America. Twice as many babies are killed in the womb than the next leading cause, heart disease. And as we've come upon this 39th memorial, what thoughts go through your mind?
I think of it in the terms of God's perspective. I studied this years ago, kind of from a biblical perspective. We know that God takes note of every tear that we cry. We know that He takes note of every child that He creates in the womb. And can you imagine the hue and outcry in the pain in God's mind or in God's heart as He sees that we destroy a gift that He gives to us? It's like taking those Christmas gifts that we all unwrapped here a month ago or so from underneath the tree and throwing them directly into the fireplace without ever opening them. That's the sort of gift, because God opens and closes the womb. He says every child is a gift, a reward, a heritage, and we just take that baby and literally dismember it and throw it in the trash. And I think that's disturbing to God. It should be disturbing to us as a nation. We're literally destroying our future every day.
Troy, I had just read off a litany of states, 18 different states, taking their total combined population, and still those populations fall short of the number of abortions that have happened here in the United States. How is it that our nation is so blinded to the greatness of this atrocity?
Well, the good news is, yes, it has been blinded, but it's slowly waking up. We see that the tide is turning in the past several years. People are beginning to understand what abortion is. I like to phrase it like this, Jim, that this experiment that America entered into, called Roe versus Wade, or abortion on demand, for the past 39 years has been an utter failure. And people are beginning to understand that the failure is so great, it's impacting us as a nation. We're beginning to see, I think, remedial judgments from God. Individuals throughout the nation are experiencing the pain and suffering of a lost child in their life. Think about it. You'd be hard-pressed to find somebody in the United States that hasn't been touched somehow by the tragedy of an abortion, because it just doesn't affect that woman. It affects her boyfriend or fiancé or husband. It impacts two sets of grandparents. It impacts siblings. And that's why I see that the young people, the people that have been born in the last 39 years, that have literally been survivors of the abortion holocaust, 1/3 of their generation has been murdered. These are the people that are the most vocal, outspoken advocates for life that we've seen in 2 decades.
Troy, as we take a look at the presidential field right now, are you, and just taking this one issue, because there are so many different issues, but just looking at this one issue, are you satisfied or are you concerned with the caliber of candidates that are emerging?
You know, I posted on my Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, I wish I could press the reset button here on the candidates that we have. It's interesting that the top 2 people polling right now, Romney and Gingrich, are not the people that we necessarily want in that position. Everybody's voted 2/3 of the people in Iowa voted against Romney. Having said that, there isn't anybody in the field that doesn't call themselves pro-life and isn't acting to court the pro-life community. So that's much different than, say, 1996 when Bob Dole was seriously pro-choice.
There's an interesting development coming forth out of the state of Maryland this morning, being reported that abortionist Nicola Irene Riley arraigned this morning, charges that she murdered a healthy, viable, preborn child during an illegal late-term abortion last year. What can you tell us about this case?
Well, this is a huge case. I mean, we'd probably fill up a whole hour about this. This is the case that might overturn Roe versus Wade. You know, everybody says we need to overturn Roe. Well, I'm still waiting for Dred Scott decision to be overturned. Oftentimes what happens is you have a modification of law. And this is a case in which Nicola Riley and her cohort, Stephen Brigham, were doing late-term abortions. They would start them in New Jersey, but because New Jersey requires an OBGYN certification to do late-term abortions, he would do the induction procedure where he'd kill the baby with an injection in New Jersey and then go across state lines the next day to deliver them. But Mr. Brigham didn't have a medical license. Nicola Riley did. Well, they botched an abortion there, and it was a horrible botch. This woman, DB, her initials are DB, had to be life flighted to Johns Hopkins University in order to save her life. In the interim, the police came to the abortion clinic wondering what had happened and found 35 late-term babies in the freezer.
Oh, my.
One of them was DB's child that was aborted there. And one of these babies was as old as 36 weeks gestationally, so this baby could have been born at any minute and didn't even have to go to the NICU, the intensive care unit for infants, or premature babies. So what Maryland law says is that if a baby dies in the commission of a crime, then that could be considered homicide. And because Nicola Riley and Stephen Brigham were involved in a conspiracy to commit a criminal act, these abortions were not, quote, legal. And therefore, both of them, Nicola Riley and Stephen Brigham, have been charged with murder in the first degree for an abortion. This is the first time in U.S. history, at least to my knowledge, that this has happened. And both Nicola Riley and Stephen Brigham are challenging this on constitutional grounds that they're immune from prosecution because they're abortionists.
Yeah, well, I see, too, that their attorneys are arguing, saying, hey, these charges, they're inappropriate. Abortion is legal. It's legal, and so, therefore, there should not be any charges brought against them.
Well, we call it the abortion distortion. It used to mean that whenever you're a pro-life advocate and you're in court, you get thrown in jail no matter what you did. But the other side of the abortion distortion is once you start to pervert common sense and justice, it starts to creep into all other sorts of law. For instance, if a woman's boyfriend, which this is a sort of scenario that happens all the time, wants her to have an abortion, does not want her to have his baby, and she does anything to her for her to have a spontaneous abortion, and that baby dies, then he could be charged with murder. However, she could be walking across the street to an abortion clinic and have an abortionist take the life of that baby, and that's so-called perfectly legal under Roe versus Wade. But here, in this case of Nicole O'Reilly and Stephen Brigham, is where these two contradictory pieces of law meet. And it will be decided in the court, and it may be that one case that goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court looks at this and says, you know what, dismembering human babies in the womb, right there at the 36th week, right before birth, where these babies could very easily survive outside the womb, is despicable. We should not allow it in this country, and we're going to outlaw it, and we're going to extend human rights, the protection of human rights, to all children in the womb. That's our desire. That's what we've been fighting for the past 39 years. And this is the case that might take it to the Supreme Court.
You know, and when you look at the compassion that they exercised in transporting this woman to the hospital, I understand she's bleeding away and they take her in a private vehicle?
Oh, yeah. See, like I said, this is something we could talk about all day long. He had set up, Stephen Brigham had set up this secret abortion clinic. It was secret because he didn't want neither Maryland or New Jersey to know that he was completing these late-term abortions across the border where it was more or less legal. So when this botched abortion began to happen, Nicole O'Reilly worked on this poor woman, DB, for over 2 hours trying to extract the baby. Unfortunately, this baby that was upwards of 28 weeks was shoved through the uterine wall up into the abdominal cavity and actually pierced the woman's bowels, and some of her bowels were actually protruding from her body. They couldn't take care of this complication, so they simply put her into a rental car that they had rented and drove her a couple of blocks down the street to the emergency room. These two physicians, Nicole O'Reilly and Stephen Brigham, refused to identify themselves, only said that they were from the secret abortion clinic up the street. Of course, that's going to raise the red flags of everybody in that emergency room, but they took one look at this patient and had her life flighted down to Johns Hopkins University, and thank God they saved her life. And in the interim, every physician along the way that saw this woman filed a criminal complaint, and that's what really should happen in these sorts of situations, and that's bringing these two abortionists to justice.
And you said 35 aborted babies were found in the freezer?
That's exactly it. And that's a common practice in abortion clinics around the country because they're so cheap. As we've detailed, there's really no compassion for the women, obviously no compassion for the babies. It's all about a profit motive. They're trying to get as much money as possible. So rather than having a proper waste disposal company come and pick up these babies and properly dispose of human... It's kind of hard to talk about. I mean, you don't want to speak about children as human waste.
Yeah.
But, anytime you have things like syringes or blood or, say, an amputated part of your body or a tumor, it needs to be picked up and handled in certain ways so it doesn't infect the rest of the population. And so these people would just simply throw these babies into the freezer until such time as that freezer was full, and they would have a company, say, like Stericycle, a nationwide company, to come and pick up those babies.
Wow. We're speaking today here on Crosstalk with Troy Newman, president of Operation Rescue. And folks, there's more to come as we remember this 39th date, 39 years of Roe versus Wade. We'll be right back.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, penicillin and other antibiotics don't work as well as they used to, do they?
Chris, you're right. Evolutionists say that's because the germs are evolving and becoming resistant to the old drugs. I reject the use of the word evolution for this process. When an antibiotic is introduced into a petri dish full of germs, all of the germs die except those few which are resistant to that antibiotic. Those are the only ones which reproduce, and pretty soon all of the bacteria are resistant to that antibiotic. Even though evolutionists use this as a primary example of evolution, it's not really evolution, but it is selection. Face it, Chris, evolution is bad science. These overblown claims have little to do with the truth. A much better view is creation, and that's discussed back in Genesis.
For more on the importance of creation, visit our website at icr.org. $50 million plus killed at the hands of abortionists across this nation since the 1973 Supreme Court decision saying it's okay. Well, folks, it's not okay, and America needs to wake up to this very matter, and we're going to talk about some positive aspects and what is being done to stop the abortion from taking place. But as we're speaking today with Troy Newman from Operation Rescue, Troy, I just want to start with a piece of good news. I mean, it was an interesting story I read on Monday of this week from LifeSiteNews.com. You may have seen the story. Unborn baby saves father's life with early morning kick. Sarah McDonald, 7.5 months pregnant, says her unborn child has already saved his father's life. What happened? Well, it was the early morning hours, Saturday, January 7th. McDonald woke up after receiving a strong kick from her unborn baby. What followed was that she described to CBS Atlanta as one of the scariest moments anyone could go through when she discovered her husband was not breathing, had no pulse. Thanks to the timely wake-up call from that baby, she was able to begin giving her husband CPR, call 911. Her efforts with CPR were not successful, but 2 policemen who arrived were able to revive her husband. Sergeant Mike Hale said that at first he appeared deceased. We didn't have a pulse. He wasn't breathing. However, after several dozen compressions, he began to breathe again. Story has a happy ending for this young family. Probably wouldn't have turned out so well if that family's newest member hadn't placed that kick there. What a tremendous story here, Troy.
I love hearing stories like that. I have personal experience with something similar. A lot of people say that, if the woman's life is in danger, you need to take that baby's life. And the pro-life movement has always insisted to treat both the mother and baby as separate and distinctly separate individuals and try to treat them both to the best of your ability. Well, my neighbor had kidney failure and was on dialysis on a weekly basis just to save her life. Well, interestingly enough, she got pregnant during this whole procedure, and it was going on about a year when she finally got pregnant. And as that baby began to grow within her, the baby's kidneys began to function for the mother. And at the end of her gestation, the baby's gestation, she did not have to go on kidney dialysis at all. Once that baby was born, somehow, some way, I'm certainly not a physician or a molecular biologist, but her kidneys were healed.
Wow.
And I Googled that one time, and I found that it actually happened several other times. Babies are meant to be a blessing. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you start to go beyond that and start looking at them in a different way, you're really defying God's intended purpose. But if you look at it from this perspective, God says, I'm going to bless you with children. He doesn't say I'm going to curse you with children. He calls them a reward, a gift, a heritage. In fact, if you have many of them, Psalm says that that's a good thing. He doesn't look down from heaven and say, Jim, I'm going to really mess up your life. I'm going to curse you. I'm going to really get after you. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to give you children. No, when he really wants to knock your socks off with a blessing, he sends you a baby. And this even includes the circumstances in which that baby was conceived. In fact, look throughout the Scriptures. We see instances where it might be considered less than a perfect match in way a baby is conceived, but ultimately God takes that child and raises him up for his or her, that baby for his purposes.
Well, Troy, we have watched this story taking place there, as we mentioned here, with abortionist Riley, and there's another case. It's important for us to understand the horrendousness of abortion, and certainly there's another story that unfolded here several months ago. Abortionist Kermit Gosnell, where it appears now a number of his employees will be testifying against him. Just give us a glimpse of this story, if you would.
Well, this is a situation where the police were going in. We had made various complaints to the state of Pennsylvania. This is in Philadelphia, where this abortion clinic is located, or was located. It's now closed. We had so many complaints had come through this. We had complained to the state. Well, he was also operating what the state thought was a pill mill. There were so many Oxycontins that were going through this place. So they went in there, and what they saw they called a house of horrors. That's not my words. That's not right-wing rhetoric, but that's the words of the police officers that went in there. They found many, many aborted children, some of them even decapitated. He kept the feet of some of his victims in jars. It was really grotesque. Well, in any case, the police had come to find out that he was doing live birth abortions. He would induce a woman into labor. The baby would be often born alive, and he would take a surgical scissors, and he called it snipping, where he would pierce the back of the baby's neck and snip the spinal cord with these scissors, and of course that would cause instant fetal demise. Mr. Gosnell, along with 9 of his employees, were charged with murder. It's a little bit different than the Riley case because this is a live birth abortion. It was an infanticide. But certainly it was grisly, it's shocking, and most of those employees, if not all, have now pled to plea bargains, and they're all going to jail for a very long time. Mr. Gosnell is going to face trial here sometime in the near future on murder 1, on 8 counts, 1 for killing Carl Monger, which died from a drug overdose during an abortion there at his abortion clinic, and then 8 other charges for killing these preborn babies.
Wow. Troy, your ministry, Operation Rescue, has announced a new groundbreaking website, abortiondocs.org. Tell us about it.
Abortiondocs.org is a website that's been 2 years in the making, possibly more. We have literally mountains, file cabinets full of documentation on people like Gosnell, Brigham, Riley, Pendergraft, Andrew Rutland, Ulrich. I mean, the list goes on and on, because nobody really aspires to become an abortionist, and they're good. You really sink to this level, and oftentimes as you're sinking, you commit criminal acts, misconducts, botched abortions, killing people on the operating room table. So we've compiled a list of all the abortionists that we could find in the country, along with every abortion clinic. Every single abortion clinic is listed on this database. And we're uploading things like pictures of ambulance runs to this abortion clinic, or a 911 call where the clinic staff is calling 911 for help because they've got a patient that's bleeding on the operating room table. And the intended consequences of a website like this is that the public will be truly informed that abortion may be, quote, legal, but it's never safe. It's never safe for the baby, and it's never safe for the mom. And we want the prayer warriors of this country to start praying for these abortionists by name, praying for these abortion clinics by name, and if they're near to them, to go there and be a public witness against child killing.
Are you trying to shame the abortionists?
Well, I don't have to shame them. They're doing shameful things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, many seem to be rather proud of their actions and very defensive of their actions.
Exactly. You know, years ago I was a computer engineer, and I would actually sell and build and repair computers. And if someone came to my house or my place of business and said that I was doing computer repair, I'd be very proud of that, and I'd be outside handing out business cards. But that's not the case with abortionists. They want to do these things oftentimes very secretly. And when, for instance, one abortionist in San Diego I'm familiar with told all of his neighbors that he was a brain surgeon. Or another one said he was a weight loss specialist. And when exposed, they will quit. They will oftentimes quit when you go to their hospitals and say that this abortionist who practices here or is private practice, that this person does abortions. It's much better for them to hang on to their day job than to continue doing moonlighting as an abortionist.
Mm-hmm. Now, you are actually encouraging people to go to that site and watch as the number of abortion clinics drop.
We've seen in the past 15 years, 70% of the nation's abortion clinics close. And, Jim, I want to repeat that because people are saying, what did that guy just say? In 1991, there were 2,176 documented abortion clinics. Today, and you can look at this at abortiondocs.org, there are 663. Simple math equation says 70% of all the nation's abortion clinics have closed and not reopened. Now, if this is like Blockbuster, nobody rents videos anymore. I guess they get them online or Redbox or that Netflix online. It's like VHS tapes. Abortion clinics are going the way of the dodo bird, VHS tapes, 8 tracks, etc. It's one of those things that, no pun intended, it's a dying industry. The abortion is a dying industry, and we're hoping to see this trend continue. We're going to do everything in our power to peacefully, legally, morally, and ethically close every single abortion clinic in the country.
And I guess there's good news on the horizon from Rockford, Illinois on that count.
Hey, that place, listen, this abortion clinic in Rockford, Illinois is located in a former church. I was so horrified when I found that out. We immediately began praying and working, and the great prayer warriors there in Rockford had just prayed relentlessly through all sorts of attacks, physical attacks by the police department there. But that place is closed down, and it's joined the other 1,500-plus abortion clinics that have closed throughout the nation.
I'd like you to comment on a press release that came out from NARAL Pro-Choice America. It came out yesterday. They issued their 21st edition of, quote, Who Decides the Status of Women's Reproductive Rights in the United States? And quoting from this release, they say, the report shows that states enacted more than twice as many anti-choice measures in 2011 as the previous year, and that the legislative landscape could open the door to even more attacks in 2012. They state that 26 states enacted 69 anti-choice measures in 2011, the second highest number since the organization started their tracking data in 1995. Could you just comment on the legislative measures that are being enacted that's causing this meltdown to NARAL and to Planned Parenthood?
It's so beautiful. Actually 480 bills were presented throughout various state legislatures, and only, I think, the 69 passed. But we're going to get a bunch of those again next year. This is the tidal wave of pro-life sentiments that are happening across the country. In 1993, the Casey, Planned Parenthood versus Casey case came out of Pennsylvania, opened the door for restrictions. Before that, Roe versus Wade, Doe versus Bolton allowed abortion completely unrestricted all the way through all 9 months of pregnancy. But at that time, the court said, there could be some restrictions put on, just as long as there wasn't a, quote, undue burden. Well, anyway, we've slowly been pushing that undue burden wall further and further back. So places like South Dakota, you actually have to wait 3 days, not 24 hours, but 3 days before you can get an abortion. You have to be given all the details of your fetal development. You have to be given counseling by pro-life advocates and shown a sonogram picture, a detailed sonogram picture of your baby. And we know when all this happens, well over 70% of the women keep their babies. Now imagine if you owned a store or a shop and you were required to give some information out to one of your prospective buyers, that 70% of them would be turned away. Well, you wouldn't be in business very long. And that's why NARAL, Pro-Choice America, these rabid pro-aborts are really fearful of pro-life legislation.
Troy Newman is our guest here today on Crosstalk. Let's open our phone lines. If you have a question you'd like to ask, a comment you'd like to make, our number 800-733-9829. 1-800-733-9829. This is Crosstalk. We'll be right back.
This is a time of unprecedented opportunity for the pro-life movement. As exhibited by the current debate over government-run health care, the public is having profound second thoughts about abortion, and more people are labeling themselves as pro-life. Better yet, this trend is growing among the young. Meanwhile, the opposition is having a more difficult time selling their agenda. The number of abortion clinics in America is plummeting from a high of more than 2,000 to less than 750 today. This has resulted in a significant drop in the number of children killed. In the book On Message, author Mark Crutcher says this is no time to relax, but a time to educate new people on the pro-life message. On Message provides solid answers to the toughest questions posed by pro-abortionists. To obtain your copy of On Message, send a donation of $15 or more to VCY America, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. To contribute by phone, call 1-800-729-9829.
As we remember the 39th anniversary of Roe v. Wade this Sunday, our guest today is Troy Newman, who is with Operation Rescue, the president. And folks, check out the website, abortiondocs.org, abortiondocs.org. And just before we take calls here, let me ask you, Troy, what can we do? What action steps can people take in regard to this matter of stopping the killing, this quote-unquote legalized killing?
You know, I go by one simple principle, and that is Ephesians 5:11. God says, have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. And what could be more unfruitful than stripping the fruit of the womb? And so exposing the misdeeds of the abortion industry. If you live near an abortion clinic, be out there finding out what they're doing wrong. Are they dumping babies illegally? Are they violating Patient Privacy Act? Are they botching abortions? Are they killing people like moms? Are they? There's the plethora of things. When you find that out, expose it. Talk to the media. File the necessary reports with the state health officials, the attorneys general. Stand on the street corner with a sign showing people what goes on there, and you will see that abortion clinic close. I guarantee it.
Troy, are you concerned by the trend that we're seeing for these new super centers, these super abortion clinics that are being raised up?
You know, not as concerned as you would think. I see a lot of people in the pro-life movement wringing their hands, and they're saying, yeah, these little abortion clinics are closing, but the big mega centers are opening up. These mega centers are being opened by Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood does 30% of all of the nation's abortions, all of them, over 300,000. But 46% of all of their funding comes from you and me, the taxpayer. So all we have to do to destroy these monolithic, massive abortion mills is to take away their money. And that defunding process has already begun. I think 9 states, including Kansas and Texas and Indiana, have taken away their funding. If we can get it taken away at the federal level, which if we can take back the House, we've got the House and the Senate, and if we could somehow get a pro-lifer as president here in about 11 months, I think we can completely defund Planned Parenthood, and then it's game over. We win.
And this is on the state level, too. And I know our state, our governor right now facing recall, and Planned Parenthood has joined on to this recall effort, lauding the recall effort because they're just beside themselves for his enacting legislation that has stripped them of funds that they grew to depend upon here in the state of Wisconsin. And they want to do everything possible to get Scott Walker out because he is a very pro-life governor.
You know, you got to look at where the coalitions lie. It's oftentimes the Catholics and the evangelicals and economic conservatives align themselves behind certain candidates because we know we get a whole package. On the other side of the coin, you got to look and you see the communists, the socialists, the homosexuals, the pro-abortion people, and the unions all gather together and they put their candidate in. And that is evil. You're right. These people, they thrive on public money. They're against capitalism. They're against the free market. They're against the children. We've got to defeat these people in every election cycle. And I believe it's actually immoral. It's a sin for us not to vote. And it's even worse not to vote for the right person, the best person on the ticket.
Let's get to the phone lines, which are packed here today on Crosstalk. By the way, our number 800-733-9829. As you hear a caller hang up, that's your opportunity to call. We're going to begin in Arkdale, Wisconsin. Tom, you're on the air.
Hi, Troy and Jim. I got a couple comments. First of all, I don't believe Scott Walker is very pro-life. He has exceptions, and so God isn't going to look at all the kids that he didn't kill. He's going to look at the ones that he's allowed to be killed. And I think we may be running into a failure of strategy here because every one of the laws that says, well, you have to have an ultrasound or you have to wait 3 days and then you can kill the baby, according to a Notre Dame professor, will be used, even if Roe versus Wade was overturned tomorrow, will be used to keep abortion legal.
Okay, well, we'll have him address that, but I'll tell you, Scott Walker has done more for the saving of innocent human life than I think any governor before him. But that brings up the argument, Troy, here on what some call incrementalism, whereby you take steps incrementally to wipe out abortion. Your thoughts on this issue?
Well, everything is incremental. You eat your breakfast incrementally. Our faith comes incrementally. We grow incrementally. So I've heard this hogwash of, quote, pass a law and then you can kill the baby baloney for so many years. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't have a crystal ball what's going to happen when we, quote, overturn Roe versus Wade. I gave you a perfect scenario in the first hour about how we can amend the current law and to abolish abortion just with prosecuting abortionists. But here's the point that we need to get to. All the babies that are destined to die today are being sentenced to die by Roe versus Wade. They're dying already. They're already going down. They're already being murdered. And we have a holy obligation to go in and rescue as many of them as we can. And if that means all I can get today is a 24-hour waiting period or an informed consent or some fetal informational sonogram law, and I know statistically that saves babies or closes abortion clinics, I have a moral obligation to do that. And the very next morning after it passes, I'm going to come back to the table and fight for the next piece of legislation, because our ultimate goal is to stop every abortion. But I disagree with those people vehemently that say we need to save them all tomorrow or none of them at all.
Charleston, Illinois. Jim, you're on the air.
Yes, I actually have a couple of questions. First of all, I've heard something about there's going to be a special show on your station on Saturday regarding abortion, Saturday evening.
I'm not aware of that.
I heard there was some show from 7 to 10 or something like that on Saturday night, but I could be confused.
No,
that's the reason I was asking.
Yeah, no, that's not us.
Someone told me about it during Days of Praise. So, the other thing I would like to ask is, last night on the presidential debates, I heard former Speaker Newt Gingrich comment that I believe he said the freshman class of congressmen this last time around was the most pro-life group in history, and I would just like you to comment on that. And also, I know you can't really indicate which to vote for, that kind of thing, but could you say of the four remaining candidates, which one has the most positive pro-life record? Thank you very much.
Okay, Jim.
Well, I would say I don't know how people define the most pro-life in history. I would say that they voted to defund Planned Parenthood, and that's a significant advancement. It's never been done before in history. I think we're going to get the job done sometime in the future. I don't know when, but it's got to go through the Senate, and it's got to be signed into law by the president. So all these things need to be put in place. I'm very excited about the direction of where things are going, but at the same time, the Congress still voted to extend our debt limit. They passed a budget that did fund abortion, and that's also very disturbing. So I'm cautiously optimistic to say that they're pro-life, but cumulatively, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, as far as the four remaining candidates, I think they're all probably pro-life. The top two frontrunners, Romney and Gingrich, I don't really have many good things to say about them. I believe Ron Paul is very, very pro-life. When he speaks on the issues of Federal Reserve and monetary policy, I love him. National policy or foreign policy, not so much. I've personally endorsed Rick Santorum. I know him. I met him. I think he's a great guy, and I think he'd make a great president, too.
Our next caller is Laverne from Wichita, Kansas. You're in the air, Laverne.
Hello. Do you know where I can find out from these 50 million people that have been murdered since 73, how many descendants would be taxpayers? It is my thinking that Social Security wouldn't be in trouble, minimum wage wouldn't have to be increased to prevent workers from working, and there wouldn't be necessity for outsourcing.
Troy, we talked about the over 50 million, and we talked about the population of states, but one thing our caller brings up is that even the descendants of those who have been killed by abortion.
He makes an excellent point. You know what a Ponzi scheme is, and that's that more people pay at the bottom than receive benefits on the top. And as long as you have a widening base at the bottom of that pyramid, the Ponzi scheme can continue to operate. That's essentially what the Social Security system is. With abortion being introduced in 1973, if you just take, say, half the abortion numbers of 50 million, 25 million people might be in the workforce and even be contributing to the GDP. So, and they're not, and because they're not here, they're not contributing to Social Security. So that's one of the major reasons, other than the fact politicians have raided the Social Security account, but that's a topic for a different day. But the Social Security would be full today if you had more people at the bottom of this pyramid paying into the top. So he makes an excellent point. We're having fewer and fewer children to pay more and more people Social Security on the top end.
Our telephone number, 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Pensacola, Florida. And Adele, you're on the air.
I wonder if you, Jim, or Troy are aware of the 180 movie that was on YouTube, 33 minutes long, convincing people amazingly, helping them figure out that abortion is so wrong. It's 33 minutes is all it is. There's no sonogram, but they're comparing the Holocaust and, putting the people in the position like if you were the driver of the bulldozer to push these live people into a grave. Would you think that is right? Anyway, you can see on their faces how they wake up and see how wrong.
I'm going to have Troy come in a moment, but Adele, you'll be interested in knowing we interviewed Ray Comfort for a full hour here on Crosstalk in promotion of the 180. Very excellent. We've shown it several times on our television station. Thank you for the call, Troy. Your take on it.
I love the movie 180 and what Ray Comfort is doing in bringing these polemic arguments to YouTube or to DVD where many people can see them. This is exactly why the pro-life movement is winning. This is something that we do on college campuses and high school campuses in large groups. I've been to the largest Earth Day fair for about 20 years in a row running. And we just sit down and talk to people about abortion. And when you start making logical arguments about why killing your child is not reasonable using philosophy, religion, ethics, science, medicine, all these things point in the right direction. Think about this. Not one single piece of evidence in technology or medicine or science advancement in the last 38 years, 39 years has proven their point. In fact, exactly the opposite. And when you bring this to the American people, we win. We win these debates time and time again.
Folks, and just also on this note, it just so happens VCY operates a bookstore here in southeast Wisconsin. It's called the VCY Bookstore. And Ray Comfort also has a book out by that same title, 180, and really gets into these issues. And it just so happens that this very month they are giving that book. It's like 30% off. Normally $11.99. They're making it available for $7.91. Plus, if you buy that book at that reduced rate, they're giving you a free DVD of 180. And if you'd like to get a copy of that, you can call this toll-free number to our bookstore, and you have to do it yet here in January, this next week, at 1-888-722-4829. That's 1-888-722-4829, and just ask for the DVD, the book 180 information. They'll be glad to help you out with it. Well, we've got a quick break upon us, and we're going to come back for the final segment. Our telephone number here, I have a couple open lines, 800-733-9829, as we're speaking with Troy Newman today on Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. In his book, Hide or Seek, Dr. James Dobson reportedly wrote, quote, lack of self-esteem produces more symptoms of psychiatric disorders than any other factor yet identified, end quote. I believe the problem with Dr. Dobson's statement is that it is not only unbiblical, but I believe it's not accepted by many experts. When two doctors studied more than 200 criminals, did they discover they suffered from low self-images? No, to the contrary. They discovered that of the lot, there was not a single criminal who believed he was evil. Each criminal thought of himself as basically a good person, even when planning a crime. I believe the reality is that man's problem is they love themselves too much. They esteem themselves too highly. That's the issue of a sin nature. Martin Lloyd-Jones accurately wrote, quote, one of the best tests of whether we're truly a Christian or not is this: do I hate my natural self? End quote. For the Worldview Week in Minute, I'm Brandon House.
Our guest today is Troy Newman from Operation Rescue, and check out their latest site, abortiondocs.org. abortiondocs.org. And Troy, your main website, give us that web address too, if you would.
Yeah, that's operationrescue.org.
Okay, and people, I believe, can even sign up there and get news releases? We
have new information every day coming out about the crimes of the abortion industry. So sign up and we'll send you an email. Promise not to flood your email box too much, though.
But you can stay informed and know how to be involved. And Troy, prayer is absolutely critical to this issue.
I think it is. There's nothing I do ever without praying about it first. And of course, when I don't pray about it first, usually when I get slapped in the head. But God will lead us. God has told us that He's going to be with us till the end of the age. He told us He'll guide us. He told us He'll answer the prayers that we pray. And so we pray according to His will, like abortion clinics close, babies get saved. You think He's not going to answer it? I mean, that's just a lack of faith to think otherwise. That's why I said 70% of the nation's abortion clinics have closed.
Our next caller is Doreen from the state of Indiana. You're on the air, Doreen.
Hello. I'm so happy to know that such a station is available. I'll advertise you, but let me just say, I was driving when the gentleman mentioned that abortion clinics no longer use the disposals, the waste disposals, but they freeze whatever they're taking, mutilating, I should say, murdering is the better word for it, whatever they're murdering. We had a horrible murder here just shortly before Christmas, and that just made me pull over to the side of the road when I heard that gentleman say about, half an hour ago, I guess, about the freezers, because this was a registered pedophile person that committed this murder on a 9-year-old girl. And when I, when I heard the evening news, I don't even know if you want me to explain what.
But he beat her over the head with a brick, didn't he?
Oh, you sure are up on the news. Yes, he did. Did you catch the part about how he disposed of that little saint? He
dismembered her, put her in a dumpster, and kept her parts of her in his freezer. And that's a sort of maniacal sociopath personality that I believe are inhabiting the abortion industry today. And I could give you story after story. In fact, go to abortiondocs.org, and you'll find more stories than you can really stomach about these abortionists that are operating so-called safe and legal abortion clinics today.
Abortiondocs.org. Doreen, thanks for bringing that to our attention. And you're right, it is horrendous what has taken place here with this young gal. It is also horrendous what is taking place inside abortion clinics every day across America. Scott in Milwaukee, you're on the air.
Yeah, I guess it's like we hear through everything, the rhetoric that we have. I mean, I'm one person that is not for abortion. I guess I'd say I'm anti-abortion, but I'm pro-choice. And what I mean by that is I think the only way we're going to get rid of abortion is honestly not by laws, but it's by changing a culture and views and how we view abortion and adoption and those types of things. I mean, I adopted my little girl, and that really changed my views of abortion. And I guess, you would be the person, you would hate me because I belong to a union, so that makes me communist or socialist or whatever we believe. And until we can get that, I mean, honestly, I think the pro-life side and the Planned Parenthood are the only two people that together that are going to get a solution for it. And I think until we quit hating each other, there's always going to be a divide, and we're not going to get the results we want. But I mean, I guess I don't understand how hating the other side or hating people is going to be a solution.
Yeah,
it's kind of like trying to bomb Afghanistan.
Yeah, Troy, I'm going to have Scott, I'm going to have our guest address that. But are we talking, Troy, about hating the people, or are we talking about hating the act of what they're doing?
Oh no, I don't hate anybody. I mean, God tells us specifically to pray for our enemies, and I love you, man. I belong to the IAM, International Association of Machinists, for a number of years. I don't like what my union stewards did and what they paid for and how they stood with the communists. I had my union stewards actively trying to pursue me to sign up for the communist newspaper. I didn't like that. But hey, I was a union member for a number of years. We don't hate people. We dislike the things that they do. I dislike the fact that abortionists dismember little babies, viable babies, throw them in the freezer, that they butcher women. But I think you're right, my friend, that we need to change the culture, and ultimately the laws of our nation will reflect our culture. The reason we have Roe versus Wade and so many other immoral legislation is because the people of the country approve of it. I used to live in California for a number of years. I finally left, and I like to say I actually moved to the United States. But it's one of those states that have just kind of gone off the deep end. I just wonder where these people are going.
Yeah.
So listen, no, we don't hate. We love and appreciate those sorts of comments, and dialogue is always most important.
Thank you, Scott. Jim in Daphne, Alabama, you're on the air.
Yes. 2 points I want to make is, number one, we need to be aware that the lady that was conned into being the sponsor of Roe versus Wade for the past number of years has been working to get it overturned.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is there was an organization called the Florence Crittenden Home for Unwed Mothers. That my wife was worked for one as a caseworker in Charlotte, North Carolina. Did a lot of good work to help these young girls as young as 13 through up to 40 to deal with their birth child and to either keep it, put it up for adoption or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But these women that went through this, for example, they go through this abortion, they have nobody counseling them, helping them with the emotional and instability that will be created.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of them have committed suicide? Mm-hmm. How many of them have become, say insane, erratic, and so forth?
Jim, we're out of time. Troy, we have about 30 seconds if you want to respond.
Well, I wanted to go back to Scott and tell him I was adopted too, and I appreciate people that look at the adoption issue. Abortion is not health care, okay? Abortion is really the problem, and that's what the caller was just hitting on, and we need to support our crisis pregnancy centers and our women's homes and let these women give birth to their children and not feel that the only option is to go to the abortion clinics.
Troy Newman has been our guest here today from Operation Rescue. You can visit operationrescue.org and their new site, Abortion Docs, DOCS, abortiondocs.org. Troy, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Troy Newman has been with us from Operation Rescue, folks. And again, keep in mind, this Sunday marks that 39th memorial, Roe v. Wade. Over 50 million lives have been taken at the hands of abortionists. We need to pray. We need to repent as a nation. We need to change people's minds on this issue, and people's hearts need to change. It happens as they know Christ as Savior. Thanks for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.